welcome to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz, who is not here today, and Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good evening.
It is Monday, April 28th, 2025. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more. Gonna have a pretty detailed weekly update this week. Doing something a little different with the weekly updates. I wanted to make them a little bit longer, do like a blog type thing. I don't know, just because I want to do more. The project that I'm working on right now, which Patreon subscribers know about, it's going to take a while. It's tons of research, lots of stuff I have to look into, multiple games I have to play. So that I will get to. But the update this week, I'm going to try and give a more detailed breakdown of where I'm at with the project, and maybe some updates on a few other things. So yeah, go check us out on Patreon. Okay, so we have lots to talk about today, and we actually don't. We've got one story that we'll cover, and other than that, you've been playing Blueprints.
Yes.
I have also been continuing to play Blueprints, and I talked a little bit about it in the last Patreon update. So why don't you share your thoughts, and we can be a little bit more, because I was vague a couple weeks ago when I talked about it, because I think it's fun to experience it without knowing a whole lot.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to know a whole lot, maybe we can put a note in the description if you want to skip all the Blueprints talk. We'll do spoiler light here, but the concept of the game and mechanics, like stuff like that, I guess we can divulge. So yeah. So what are your initial thoughts?
God, RNG just hates me.
Yeah, that's mean. That's the mean part of the game, definitely.
Yeah. I have had several runs, and just because all I draw is dead end.
Yeah. So yeah, the entire game is based on probability and chance, and there are different ways that the premise of the game is it's a mansion that you explore. In every room, it's like you draw a small hand. You draw 3 cards, and then one of those cards is going to be the room, and those cards, like the laboratory, doesn't have another door in it, which means it's a dead end.
Yeah.
So you have to keep hopefully drawing cards that have doors. Some doors require keys to unlock. Some rooms require gems. You have to find gems to be able to pick. So it's like so there's probability, there's resources, and all this stuff you can mitigate by learning like how the layout of the mansion works, because the layout of the mansion in some ways does dictate what rooms you're going to draw. You don't know this right away, but the more you play, the more you realize that depending on which side or in which places, you're gonna like draw certain cards, certain rooms that you won't draw in other places. So you can use that to your advantage. But yes, I would say I don't know. Yeah, sorry. So continue with your initial.
Other than that, I do like the roguelike aspect of it. Even with some of the not even with, but especially with some of the permanent upgrades you can get, exploring and just finding things.
So what permanent upgrades have you found?
The apple orchard.
Okay, yeah. So okay, yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what it's called, but the exterior.
Yeah, the shed. There's like a shed.
Yeah.
That is kind of by itself, and that's another. And the shed has its own deck of cards.
Yes.
That only get pulled at that shed. So it's like that's a whole. Yeah. So like the shed is an example of something that I think is cool, but something that slightly annoys me, because your roguelike limit is determined by how many rooms you enter.
Yeah.
So you start the symbol is footsteps. So every time you enter a room, this number decreases by 1, right? Essentially. So the more rooms you walk in, the more that decreases. If it gets to 0, you have to restart the day. You restart the next day, and that means that the mansion's reset. You have to go through everything all over again. So what annoys me about that side shed that you eventually unlock is some of the rooms that you draft for that shed have an impact on how the mansion certain things in the mansion will
Yeah.
interact with you that day.
Mhm.
So there is a room in the shed that makes you immune to your first 3 red rooms,
Yeah.
right? And red rooms sometimes are just
Sometimes they're just dead ends. Sometimes
they
they
have negative
increase
effects.
the number of red rooms that you draw.
Yeah, stuff like that. So that I think it's the bunker.
Yeah,
There's
the shelter.
The shelter bunker. I forget what it's called. But if you draw that room on the outside, then that impacts how you may do your run
Mhm.
inside the mansion. Okay, so the problem is that what that dictates is that you need to go to the shed first thing.
Yeah.
Because the shed, you want to get that before you start
Mhm.
exploring the mansion, which means every time you start the game, unless I haven't discovered something yet, or maybe you unlock something later, I don't know, you start in the entry hall. But if you back out of the mansion, that takes a step away. And if
Yeah.
you enter the side gate, that takes another step. I think there's one more step maybe that gets taken away.
If
maybe.
you go into that
Yeah,
shed
if you
room.
go into the room that you pick for the shed, and then when you go back and you exit the gate, that's a step. And when you enter the mansion again, that's a step, right? So it's like in order to use the mansion, not only do you have to run away
Mhm.
and then run back, but that also decreases your steps.
Yeah.
Not hugely, but it's just kind of
Well, so going there and going back, just activating the door and then running back. If you get there before you unlock the apple orchard, it's 10% of your steps.
Yeah. Is it?
Or just under 10%.
It
Because
is?
it's 4 steps there and you start with 50.
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
It's 8%. But if you get the apple orchard unlocked, you now have 70 steps, so it's closer to 4%.
Yeah.
Which easily a better trade-off. So it's good to do the first time you get there. When you get the ability to get to that shed, do it right away for that run, but hold off on doing it further until you unlock the apple orchard so that you can get that benefit of having extra steps. And instead of starting at 46 steps, you now start at 66 steps.
Yeah. And I will say that steps usually aren't an issue for me.
Yeah.
Like I usually have to end the day and I have plenty of surplus steps ready to go. I think I have ended on 0 steps. I think I'm up to like day 50 right now in my playthrough. I think I have ended a run has ended because of steps once. Literally once. Other than that, I end it myself because of dead ends or not having a key or what have you, right? So I will say that, but it is just annoying having to make that little jog out to the shed every single time in order to pick this room. And if the rooms didn't have an impact on how the shed panned out, it wouldn't be as much of an issue.
So what you can do is activate the first 3 rooms, especially if you get a walk-in closet or a storage closet that has 2 items, because you can get an ivory dice from there, and that'll give you a little bit more flexibility with the room you pick. Reroll.
Yeah. I just wish there were an option where I could start the day in the courtyard instead of starting it in the entryway. Because I hate starting the game and the first thing I do is turn around and run for 30 seconds, pick a room, and then run back for 30 seconds, right? It's like each day begins with this minute-long chore I have to do real quick before I actually start exploring the mansion. I'm not a huge fan of that. I kind of wish it was a bit different, or a bit more streamlined.
Again, it's just an additional bonus that you've unlocked for properly exploring and experimenting with the house.
Yeah, but I would argue that that some of the bonuses you get from those rooms are more than just an additional bonus. Like some of them are extremely useful. Like I don't know if you found the tomb yet, but the tomb is, once you see it, you'll know. The tomb is like a whole thing that complicates a whole nother level of complexity, right? So I don't know. I kind of wish that you could start somewhere else and not have to worry about it too much. Not have to worry about not have to worry about starting in the entryway and running back or anything like that, because I'm not a huge fan of that. Is there anything else that with?
Sorry, I've been distracted. Our stream deck's acting up.
Oh, okay, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Other than that, I have yet to enter the antechamber because every time I get close, I'm either a key away or I dead end right before the door that I need to use to get inside.
Okay. Yeah.
Or I don't have a lever from this run. I'm like,
yeah, I've done a couple levers, but and I've reached the antechamber plenty of times. And honestly, I'm not trying to complete the game yet. Like there's still things that I want to work out and solve. So I haven't really like focused on figuring out the antechamber totally. But are you trying to get straight to it and finish it, or
kinda? I mean, I'm still gonna continue. There's a lot to explore in this game.
Yes, there's a ton.
Yeah, there's a lot to explore. There's a lot of little things to figure out. Still trying to figure out some of these puzzles. Notes like I'm fucking Charlie Day.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and it's a lot, some of those things don't bother me. I don't mind that there's just like normal logic puzzles in some of the room to solve. The math thing I still don't like. It's just a chore. It's just math. I don't know.
You're talking about the dartboard?
Yes, the dartboard. It's just math. I don't want to do a math problem. Like, think of another puzzle, and it gets more complicated as you go. So, when the game first began, when I was first playing the game, I would always solve the dart puzzle to pick up those keys. Now I just leave it alone because I would rather keep exploring and keep the flow of the game moving instead of taking 5 minutes to figure out some math problem for keys that I may not need. So it's like, you know what? I'll come back to you. And because footsteps aren't always a necessity, most of the time, if I need to go back for keys and I have that room, I have plenty of steps to do so.
Every time I've gotten to the billiards room with the dartboard, I'm like, all right, snack time. I come back with a snack and I figure it out while I'm munching on something.
Nice, yeah. I don't know. I just
treat yourself.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not I don't know. I guess there's just things in the game I don't like. Maybe it's that simple. I've just seen so many people raving about it and saying it's like one of the, like Jason Schreier said it was one of the greatest games ever. I think he said it. Maybe it was somebody else. So I need to check on that.
I would say this is probably going to be a lot of people's and a lot of outlets game of the year contender.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I really don't care what wins game of the year. It doesn't matter.
No, but it's going to be one that's going to be talked about all year.
Sure, but I don't. When I play it, the feeling that I get when it'll be one of the best games I've played this year.
Yeah.
There, I'll say that. Is it? I don't know. Is like when I think about Pacific Drive, like that's the game I compare it to a lot because it brings out a lot of the same emotion in me. I don't know. Pacific Drive was just as unique, just as interesting. Pacific Drive also had characters and like a more like linear conventional story.
Have you gotten into the rumpus room?
I have, yes.
Okay, then you know there is a character there.
Well, okay, that's not really a character. Whatever, we won't talk about that. I reject that that's a character.
Wow.
Isn't a character a person?
Not always?
Yeah, not always?
No, not always.
Okay, a sentient being?
Not always.
When is a sentient being, what's a character that's not a sentient being?
There are stories where like a character is like a storm or a force of nature.
Okay, that would be a metaphor.
But there's still characters.
Or a myth. I wouldn't say that, okay, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's a character. I'd say that's a reductionist argument because you want to turn this guy into a character when he isn't. God damn it!
Fine. If he can't
just go for the gullet. Just say Data's not a person.
I'll say if he can't be a character, neither can Data.
Yeah, just Data's not real. Yeah, okay. That's one way to get me all. How dare you? How dare you? Okay.
Filthy human piece of garbage.
Yeah. So I don't want to complain about Blueprints. I was just saying. It reminds me a lot of Pacific Drive because it's got so much that I love about it, but I just don't want to repair my tires a million times.
Yeah.
I get tired of having to, and you don't just repair tires in Pacific Drive, you have to craft the thing that then you repair your tires with, and that thing goes away, and you have to craft more to keep repairing your tires. So it's this endless cycle of crafting things. Which some crafting I'm fine with, other crafting I'm like, why can't I get an upgrade where now I don't have to worry about that? I put in the work, finding the material. I don't know. These are complicated game design questions. And I think sometimes with blueprints, I feel like a lot of its difficulty is not needed. I've seen people say they've put 130 hours into blueprints, and I'm like, do you need that many? Does the game need to be that long?
No, they're just unlucky.
That I feel like I don't know when I feel like that's kind of the truth. Because so many of my runs that have ended, it's just there's not much I can do about that, and that's frustrating. Or runs where, like I talked about this last week, where the stars have to align, right?
Sometimes quite literally.
So, yeah, where it's like you need money to do something, so you just kind of have to hope that you have a lot of money, and you don't most of the time. So okay, not gonna do that anymore. Or with the car keys, it's like you kind of just have to. I found a bank there in the game. There is a vault. You can open up a safe in that vault, and you need keys for a vault. So it's the same thing as the car, where in order to solve, quote unquote, solve the puzzle of this room, you just need keys, right? And you just have to
It's less a puzzle and more
wait until the stars align. And I mitigated my probability there, because there's a room where you can put an item and it saves it. Coat check. So I found the keys to this safe, to this vault room, and I knew, okay, it was the first time I had found these keys, and I knew, I don't know how many times I'm gonna find these goddamn keys. So I
haven't been putting anything in the code check because I have a power hammer in there. I'm like, I need to figure out what the fuck this power hammer goes to.
Okay. Yeah, but I put that, but it's the same thing I did. I put it in the coat check because I thought maybe that would double my probability, because I may find it naturally and I may find the coat check. So it's like, that'll give me another chance of completing the one thing that this completes. And so it's like, I did that and I played forever, and I happened to get a check mark where I got the safe room, I got the coat check, and I was able to, it's like, okay, that's cool, but could it have happened 3 hours ago? Yes, it could have. I didn't need all these runs of me finding the coat check but not finding the safe and just having to end the run and leave the keys there. So it's just like, I just think some of the how long it is maybe partially unnecessary. I don't know. Or how many times a roadblock is put in your way, some kind of little puzzle, some kind of little issue that stops you from doing something or solving something, and the only way to solve that thing is probability. There's a boiler room that powers things if you figure out how to get all the pipes to go correctly. So I figured out how to do all that, and then there are rooms
that require the boiler room.
But the rooms have to be connected to the boiler room, either via either right next to it or via like these power tunnels that go on the roof, right? So it's like, okay, in order to power things in certain rooms, the dice just have to be in your favor, where you get the boiler room, you get the room with a thing, and then you happen to be able to connect them, right? So it frustrates me that I know how to solve this puzzle. I know how to do that. There's a puzzle in the room. Once you bring power to it, there's a puzzle that is activated that then you have to solve. I have figured out how to solve this puzzle. At least I have a pretty good lead on it, but I have not been able to attempt to solve it because you need power. So I'm just waiting until probability says, okay, you have them both. Congratulations. And that's frustrating to me. Like, I wish there was something I could do where I could force that, because it's just making me wait for probability to fall in line. And that's not fun. That's not enjoyable. That's not interactive. That's just throwing things up into the sky and hoping that, they land on the correct number. Yeah, and that's not, I don't know. And that's what frustrates me about the game. So, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I'm still playing it. I still want to like solve all the puzzles. Don't get me wrong.
Gonna go home and put a few runs in.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those cases where it's like I can't stop complaining about it, but I also just can't stop playing it, because there is a certain rush to figuring out a puzzle or discovering another layer of something. I just wish it were easier to do those things. Okay, are you playing? Doing anything else? Playing anything else?
May the dorks be with you.
We're not going to talk about that.
Then we won't talk about it.
You're going to bleep that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will.
Are you playing anything else? Doing anything? No. Okay. Well, we can we can hit the news then. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like we actually talked about it.
No. Okay, so I want to talk about this story in Aftermath by Luke Plunkett about devs dealing with generative AI. It's titled, What It's Like Working for a Company That Forces AI on Devs. Luke, we're on first name basis, spoke to a couple different developers. All of their names were anonymous and they were replaced with, I think, just placeholder names. There's a lot in this story that is, I don't know, disheartening and frustrating. But I wanted to focus on one story here from a worker named Sally. This is a little long, but I wanted to read through it. And Connor, if you wanted to share your thoughts anywhere in this, feel free. So again, Luke Plunkett in Aftermath. Sally is an animator and a 3D artist whose most recent video game work was as part of an indie studio working on a VR game. They say that AI tools made deep inroads into life at the studio, beginning with the game's creative directors and lead designers playing around with Midjourney, before quickly deciding that they wouldn't need to hire concept artists, then moving on to declaring that they wouldn't need to pay anyone at all to create the game's 2D assets, because those could just be generated by Midjourney, then edited in Photoshop. So right here we have something, and this is me talking now, right here we have something where this is sort of the worst case scenario of generative AI, right? This is sort of the boogeyman that we talk about, is it replaces somebody or replaces roles that you could hire people for, right? Already in an industry that you see constant layoffs, constant churn. There are actors that are striking. People are trying to form unions. To me, it is just so insanely distasteful that in that environment, you would decide it's not worth paying people what they're worth to do work. Instead, our product means so little to us that we are willing to plagiarize the internet in order to give us an idea of something to do.
Yeah.
And that makes me really mad. I'll call it lazy. Game development's one of those things where I think lazy isn't a good word to use because you just don't know. People work hard. You don't know. I don't know. You miss a bug. You find a bug in a game. Chances are it's not because some guy was slacking off and decided not to report the bug. There's a million things that happen that you probably don't know about. But you know what? When it comes to just deciding not to hire somebody because you'd rather use Midjourney, I'm fine with just saying, nah, that just sounds lazy and inconsiderate to me. Okay, so back to reading here. Sally began voicing their concerns directly with management when AI moved into the game's voice work, as bosses began toying with new AI-generated lines trained on work previously performed by voice actors. This is her. I raised the concern that we shouldn't be doing any of this without consent from those actors, Sally says, and was met with a very aggressive shutdown response, which was that it wasn't going to ship and would only be used as an internal tool, so it shouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, so this is also interesting because, you know what? We'll keep reading here because there's a kind of a wider point that I think is worth making. Again, this is Sally. This is pretty awful for the voice actors because there's not really anything they can do if a studio decides to do something like this. Studios already have a bunch of their voice work, and often voice actors will just send the entire recording of their voice lines over at once. So a studio will have multiple takes of each line and sometimes different variations of the same line, which is kind of a perfect example for something you could feed through AI. Sally was recently laid off from the studio along with a few of their coworkers and says that as far as they're aware, the studio's plan for its next game is to use AI-generated animations trained on motion capture to replace the role of a human animator. I think the last thing I want to add is just how frustrating it is having AI-generated art in a game that's about to ship alongside all the hard work that we human artists put into it, all because one of the directors wanted to cut down on wasting time or hiring one other person. Yeah, so your thoughts?
Well, this is just exactly what people have said would happen with AI for the past, how long has it been? Almost 10 years?
Oh, well, I mean, with generative AI,
Yeah.
I think since generative AI became like a thing, that was the first thing that people got scared of is how is this going to replace people? And,
And of course, executives everywhere said, oh, of course not.
yeah, sure.
Here we go.
And then this is kind of the result. So I have a couple different thoughts here, and some of these are more about generative AI. One that's really disappointing is I'm a big VR fan. I put on my headset for IL-2, even though it is much more effective to play IL-2 without a headset on, because you need all these fucking buttons. I play with a headset because it's just so much more immersive and intense. I don't know, I just can't get away from it. So that's just me. But like, I'm a big VR fan. I believe about VR as a medium. And it just seems like that people with power in AI, in VR, just don't care about it. Whether it's meta, outside of Steam, I guess, outside of Valve, it's like people that have, real power in the VR space seem to want it to be something other than a medium for games, good games, which we know it's really good at. It can do that extremely well. Other things we don't know, but everyone kind of wants it to force a VR into that, to force a square peg into a round hole, as it were. So that's frustrating. One, two. Also, that VR happens to have a large child audience. There are kids running all over the fucking place with headsets, probably smashing into each other and killing each other and shit. I don't know why so many kids have headsets, but they do. And so it's like, it's one of those things that this is me speculating, but it's my speculation is that you can sort of get away with this because I think children are less discerning about them. Not that adults are just super discerning, right? They aren't. Candy Crush makes $90 billion a second. But children are sort of less discerning about things. They have less of an eye for generative AI. So you can push this into games that they play, and they may not notice it as much as like an adult would or something like that, right? And knowing how many kids play, how many kid games are popular with like the Quest 2 and stuff like that. I don't know. I just feel like that's sort of the perfect storm there, right? And I don't know what like Roblox's plans are with generative AI, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, oh, they've got all kinds of ideas, because you just got 14-year-old kids running around, and who cares about them? They don't deserve good media, so give them generative AI shit. And I think one of the main issues about generative AI is that we don't really know of like a really good use case. Like, there are use cases, I'm sure, out there somewhere. I'm sure people use it for, I don't know, I've heard people say they use it for like basic coding and stuff like that. Or maybe you want to draft an email. I don't know. I'm sure there's like little tiny things. But the amount of money that's being invested specifically into OpenAI versus the use case of the thing itself seems to be there seems to be a discrepancy there, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, with the amount of money that's being invested, again, specifically into OpenAI, you would think that the use case for this would be much more obvious, much more impactful, much more unavoidable. But instead, it's like we're still trying to figure out how to use this thing. But before we even figure out how to use it, we're pouring money into generative AI. Again, specifically OpenAI. And I say specifically OpenAI because Ed Zitron, who writes about AI a lot, he often makes the case that the AI industry is OpenAI, because OpenAI partnered with Microsoft to make so much more money and has like a much larger market share than like your Anthropics or Meta's AI or whatever one Elon Musk did. So it's like, I think it kind of changes it's like if you have a bunch of rich people and if you have a bunch of millionaires in the room and then there's a billionaire in the room, right? I think that's kind of what like OpenAI is like. But in any case, so we're searching for a use case for AI. And so what do we do if there's not a use case? Well, you force it into things that it doesn't really necessarily fit, or where it doesn't really solve a problem, but you kind of just say it solves a problem. a lot of the artists in this story said that, you know, using generative AI in like an ideation phase doesn't really help. It doesn't solve an issue. There wasn't an issue with iteration and ideation in art beforehand, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem was is that maybe it took a little too long, or that you have to pay people to do it. And those
Mm-hmm.
aren't problems as much as they are the nature of art and labor, right?
Yeah.
But so like putting AI in that, does that solve any of those problems, or does that is that manufacturing a use case for a product right now that doesn't really have one? And I think that's sort of the larger. I think that's the truth. I think that's kind of what's going on now. And it's the same thing with NFTs. NFTs were the exact same case, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had a bunch of Bitcoin. What could you do with it? Not a whole lot, right? Yes, there are niche examples where you could pay your rent with cryptocurrency or something like that. And for all 12 people that did that, they had the time of their lives. But largely, cryptocurrency wasn't something that was baked into the everyday economy. So what do? Well, you create something that you can spend cryptocurrency on, NFTs, right? And you have a whole market for NFTs because suddenly all these people that have invested in all this crypto have something to spend their money on, their crypto on, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, that market crashes because NFTs are worthless. Everybody that spins and checks out is gone. They're not reinvesting, right? They check out of the market and they get the hell out of there. And they go on to the next thing, probably generative AI. So I think that's kind of what's going on here. Is, you know, these executives and CEOs, they talk about solving problems or trying to make the process smoother or something like that. But it seems like when we hear from developers, that is not the case of actually what's happening.
So what the executives are saying by solving problems isn't what the developers think the problems they're trying to solve. The problem that every CEO that's like pushing for generative AI to solve problems in their industry is doing, the problem they're trying to solve is people. Eliminating people
Yeah.
so they can keep more money for themselves.
Yeah, and I don't think that's too cynical. I really don't. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it is.
Well, to trying to avoid, you know, a traditionalist mindset like, oh, this is how we've always done things. There wasn't an issue with concept artist making concept.
Mm-hmm.
That's never been a point where people are like, oh, I wish we didn't have to, you know, have someone come up with ideas for us. Ah, that's terrible. No, people like that. People like not having to think. And the issue was you have to pay them, employ them, to give them benefits.
In some cases.
In some cases.
Definitely not in every case.
Not in every case, but in some
Yeah.
cases. And so how do you fix that problem? You replace the person with a bot that you have press a button and it gives you what you want.
Yeah. And I also think it's, I don't know, we think about we talk about, and this story talked about executive CEOs. We weren't sure, the companies went unnamed. But I do often think about, like, we often say that executives are somehow both simultaneously out of touch and in touch. It's like, and I think partially willingly, because what the hell does Andrew Wilson care about it? Andrew Wilson didn't know about Dragon Age: The Veilguard until 5 minutes before he went on that call. He didn't even know Dragon Age was an EA franchise. He was like, Dragon Age, what the hell is that? And then some guy was like, sir, it's a game that released in
Dragon D's. Anyway.
Yeah, he's like, sir, it's a game that released in the late 2000s that's critically considered like one of the best RPGs of all time. And he's just like,
And Andrew Wilson's like, who are you? I'm firing you, replacing you with AI.
yeah, exactly. And then he's like, oh, don't worry, FIFA, it's fine, but Dragon Age, no, there's the fucking shit right there. Like, so it's like, I don't know, when you hear about executives pushing AI, I wonder, partially I do think it's my prior point, which is you're trying to find a use case for something that doesn't really have one. The other one really is, how many of these people honestly think, hey, this can do a thing, And so they walk into meetings or walk up to artists and say, "Are you using this? We're paying for," instead of consulting with the artists on what they want, they just consider it such a good move. They consider it so convenient, and they don't respect the art of concept art or anything like that, that they just assume that this is a solution. So they do it anyway. So there's a level of arrogance and out of touchness there. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of both. It's tough to tell. There's another point I wanted to make, which is, I think creating an environment for AI art is dangerous for multiple reasons, not only losing jobs. Also, the more prevalent that it becomes, I think the more it's just going to be used. So I don't know. I feel like if I were a indie dev, a solo indie dev, as difficult as that is, as limited resources as you have, I really feel like I don't know. I feel like the ethical thing to do is to skip out on AI art.
Yeah.
Because what does it get you? We talked about that game with the Admiral Pacific Fleet or something like that. And we couldn't confirm it, but the guy in the the guy in the Steam page, he looked like something that AI art would create.
Yeah.
Generated AI. And his face didn't go with anything else in the game. So it's like, okay, so what did generating his face do? How many people were now interested in this niche Pacific war game because you generated a face of a general and put it on? It's like, did that really drive more wish lists? How much money are you now going to make more than you would have had you not done that? And is that difference really worth it? Does that really make your game look more professional? Or are you just turning off people like me that they see that and they go, well, I don't want to do this. Now, of course, in that game's case, they also used generative AI to clean up the writing. It's just like, okay, I don't know, you really don't need that. If your writing's not the best, that's okay. You're writing little blurbs about history. You're not writing prose. That's fine. But besides that, I think there's like a trickle down effect. I want to compare this to steroids in baseball, really performance enhancing drugs in general. But I think in baseball, just because baseball is the famous example. But sometimes you'll hear people say, "Hey, I don't care if Major League Baseball players use steroids because I want to see the home runs." And it's like, well, first of all, there's a debate to be had about steroids and home runs. We won't go there. But second of all, if we create that kind of environment, then what that does is it means if you're trying to break into the majors at the AAA level, you have to make a decision of whether or not you're going to start taking performance enhancing drugs. Because if you're trying to, if you're a left fielder for Scranton Wilkes-Barre and, you want to get out to the Yankees, then it's like, okay, and the guy at the Yankees is taking steroids, you have to decide, well, I'm going to match him because he's got an advantage over me. And if a AAA player is doing that and then AAA players are doing that, then college players have to consider it. Because they have to say, well, so it trickles down, and I don't think that's a slippery slope. You see that all over the place right now. No longer are high school kids playing 6 sports like they did in the 70s and 80s. Now it's, if your kid is 7 and can throw a baseball, he gets fast tracked into organized team sports and clinics and Tommy John surgery at 13 because he may be able to get a scholarship at 17 and get drafted by the Brewers at 19 and then, play in the minors for 5 years before he finally debuts at 26 or something like that. So it's just like, there are examples of this happening. So with generative AI, it's like, okay, if we create this environment where, I don't know, where every studio wants to use AI, then I feel like all that does is create sort of downstream effects where you create an infrastructure for something that nobody really wants, right? And that's worrying, and it sucks as you normalize it. And I don't know. I would much rather have nothing than have something generated by AI. There's that game, I'm not going to say its name because I don't know if things have changed, but a game we talked about a few months ago that looks awesome. Just looks so cool. First person horror set in like a Soviet country somewhere. Looks so cool. And at the bottom of the Steam page, it says, hey, this game uses AI generated voices. And it's like, why? if you give me the option between voice lines and Tom Nook and voice lines, but an AI generated voice, I will take Tom Nook 10 out of 10 times. Give me Tom Nook. It's fine.
Give me Soviet Nook.
Give me Soviet Nook. Instead of, because if I know it's generative AI, I just hate it. I hate that it's the thing. I hate that you had to resort to that. I hate that I don't know where it came from. These sources, whether it's copyrighted material or material that, I don't know, that maybe it isn't copyrighted, but it's like, I don't want stuff I put on the internet harvested by Sam Altman after he takes a hit off of his bong and says that, they're going to create fucking AGI in the next 6 minutes. I don't want that to happen to the stuff that I put out in the world. So I don't want to have to worry about that as I'm playing a game. So just give me voice lines without voice. Give me text with a little sound when the subtitles scroll across the screen or something like that. I would much rather have that. Is there anything else you would like to say?
On this topic, no.
But on other topics, yes.
About drugs and I want to see the drug and steroid Olympics. I want to see someone run a 100-meter dash in 0.2 seconds.
Pretty sure that's impossible.
Yeah, not with drugs and steroids.
No.
I want equestrian, but I want the horses doped up.
So who are using the drugs? You?
Yes.
Then that may be possible.
And the athletes.
Okay, that's definitely not possible. No. Although the image of a horse taking this feels like I don't know, like maybe I think you should leave. Maybe not. More like Robot Chicken. The idea of like a horse, like a racehorse taking steroids, and it's like he's all the racehorse is just jacked, and so he wins a race. But then the horse gets questioned, and then the next you smash cut, and the horse is in a suit and tie, and he's at Congress, and there's like a congressman that's like, "Mr. Horse, did you partake in horse tranquilizers?" And then the horse is just and like just trying to deny that he's taking steroids and stuff. Anyway, that's my idea for a Robot Chicken
Seth
sketch.
Green, if you're listening,
Send that into Seth Green, and stop using NFTs, Seth. Come on.
Seth Green on the show next week.
Is Seth Green on the show next
NFT
week?
Seth Green on the show next week.
Yeah, sure.
NFT more like no fucking thanks.
Got him. Okay, that was all we had planned. Yeah. Is there anything random you would like to talk about?
Probably, but I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. Sorry, I just didn't expect.
It's changed now. But a few days ago, the Rockies were 4-20.
Nice. The real life Rockies?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't realize they got off to such a poor start.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
they are doing bad.
Well, I'm sorry about that. That's too bad. All right. Well, that's what happens when shit, what's his name? I can't think of his name. He after baseball season, he just goes into the Rocky Mountains and chops down trees. Then he comes back. Charlie Blackmon. That's what happens when Charlie Blackmon retires. The Rockies just they just go straight downhill. Okay, follow us on youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse, and yeah, we will see you next week. Bye.